Are you ready? It's go time. Today we're going all in on band roster chaos is all I can say. You know, some rock lineups, they're built for the long haul, but more often than not, bandmates they come and go whether we like it or not. I mean, infighting, personality clashes, creative differences, sheer fatigue, even tragedies all take a toll on rock bands. On today's countdown, I'm giving you 6 band lineups that have changed so drastically over the years, you can hardly keep up. Some of them are almost unrecognizable, and I'm talking about some of the biggest bands ever. I'm going to call this one Downshift. And man, as usual, I got some stories. We're going to recount how one of the best bands of the 60s and 70s had their identity stolen from them, and how these imposters got away with it for decades until a brilliant move by the singer got it back. I'll tell you what it is. There's also a couple lead singers who stepped in to replace 2 of the most legendary frontmen ever. And after one gave a subpar performance, he told fans if he got 1 million negative comments on social media, he'd just quit the band altogether. Did he get voted out? Let's get into it. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you ever faked someone out with that fake vomit back in the day, you know, the kind that you would buy at a gag store in the back of a comic book, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to like, share, and comment on this video. Definitely make sure you're subscribed. A lot of people are not subscribed and they think they are. I'm telling you, I'm pulling out all the stops. I'm doing everything in my power to keep this channel going. It's a daily battle, and sometimes it seems impossible, but your help is so appreciated to keep it going. Got to keep the music alive. So let's talk about the greatest lineup shakeups in history, especially with the singers. Starting things off at number 6, we're featuring one of my favorites, Foreigner. A band that has had more members than anyone else on this list, I'm pretty sure. I think at this point they're up to 40 different members now. Foreigner, they formed in 1976, and its initial lineup included guitarists Mick Jones and Ian McDonald, bassist Ed Gagliardi, keyboardist Greenwood, drummer Dennis Elliott, and lead singer Lou Gramm. In 1977, they dropped their self-titled debut. That one sold 4 million copies in the US, and it featured top 10 singles, classics like Feels Like the First Time and Cold as Ice. Now, the next year, Foreigner released Double Vision. That hit number 3 on the Billboard 200, and during this initial 2-album run, the original 6-piece lineup stayed intact. Their third album, Head Games, traded Gagliardi for Rick Willis on bass, and as the 80s got going, the changes really started to accelerate. The release of Foreigner 4 in 1981 gave them massive hits. There was Urgent, Waiting for a Girl Like You, and Juke Box Hero.
I've been waiting for a girl like you.
That album sold an impressive 6 million, and it featured 3 new musicians, keyboardist Bob Mayo and Peter Reilich, as well as Mark Rivera, who replaced Ian McDonald on rhythm guitar. Of course, that one produced by Mutt Lange. Then 2 years later, Foreigner released Agent Provocateur and scored their first #1 single, I Wanna Know What Love Is.
I wanna know what love is.
The lineup for that one was more or less the same as 4, with the exception of Peter Reilich. In 1987, they had Inside Information, and that gave us the top 10 hit Say You Will. In that same year, frontman Lou Gramm dropped his first solo album, Ready or Not, featured his number 5 hit Midnight Blue, a song that Foreigner actually rejected after Lou offered it to the band. And then it not only became a bigger hit than any by the band going forward, but it was the most played song in 1987, winning the BMI Award, which that didn't sit well with leader Mick Jones, but hey, he's the one that said no.
See the cherry red or midnight blue.
So by the late 80s, Mick Jones was leaning hard into synth-driven power ballads, or even just ballads. It was a direction that Lou Gramm hated. He wanted to rock. In fact, going back to Inside Information, when it was time to record Mick's ballad, I Don't Want to Live Without You, Lou Gramm thought the song was so wimpy, he tried to sabotage it at the recording session. And get this, he deliberately gave an uninspired vocal performance, hoping Jones would scrap it. But I tell you, Lou Gramm, his voice is so good that even when he's not trying or when he's trying to sabotage it, his vocals still sounded great. And ultimately, his reluctant performance took I Don't Want to Live Without You to number 5 of the Hot 100. Next, Lou Gramm released his second solo album in 1989. That featured the number 6 hit Just Between You and Me. By 1990, though, he'd had enough of Foreigner. So the band brought on vocalist Johnny Edwards. And in 1991, they released their 7th album, Unusual Heat. but that fell down to number 117 on the Billboard 200. 115 spots worse than Inside Information. The following year, Edwards was out, and the guys somehow pressured Gramm to come back into the fold. And then in 1995, Foreigner released their 8th studio album, Mr. Moonlight. For Lou, it felt like a step in the right direction, but the album failed to yield a top 40 hit at all, and it did even worse on the Billboard 200, went to number 136. I gotta admit, the single Until the End of Time is really an underrated gem from that time.
Until the end of time.
Now, Mr. Moonlight would be Graham's last studio album with Foreigner, but he would stay in the lineup until 2003. During that second run, an additional 12 musicians would play in the band. When Foreigner fired back up in 2004, they brought on vocalist Chaz West before quickly pivoting to Kelly Hansen. He fronted the band from 2005 to 2025, a run nearly as long as Lou Gramm's. But during that time, on any given night, when Mick Jones, wasn't there, the band didn't have a single original member. And he started calling them fake Foreigner, but they still sold out arenas on the name and the hits alone. The new millennium would see a slew of musicians cycle through the Foreigner lineup, though, including Jason Bonham on drums. The band's modern era delivered just one more studio album in 2009, Can't Slow Down, and now they have a new singer. All right, coming in at number 5, I got the Guess Who, and this story of this band's shifting lineup is insane. So check this out. The Guess Who came together out of 2 teenage bands from Winnipeg, Manitoba, though back then they were known as Chad Allen and the Reflections, and then Chad Allen and the Expressions. That early lineup consisted of guitarist Randy Bachman, drummer Gary Peterson, guitarist and vocalist Alan Coble, a.k.a. the Chad Allen, pianist Bob Ashley, and bassist Jim Kell. Then in 1965, with the British invasion in full effect, they released a cover of Shake It All Over, and that one topped the Canadian charts.
Shaking all over.
Officials at Quality Records credited the single to Guess Who? It was actually a ploy to make listeners think that the music was an anonymous British supergroup. But the name stuck, and Shake It All Over reached number 22 in the U.S., and the band toured America. However, the pressure of touring, that overwhelmed Bob Ashley, and he quit the band. He was replaced by Winnipeg's Burton Cummings, who shared lead vocals with Allen at that point. In 1966, Allen left the group and was briefly replaced by Bruce Decker before Burton Cummings became the sole lead singer, which was a good thing. So Cummings, Bachman, Kell, and Peterson became the group's most successful lineup. We all really know as the Guess Who. In 1968, though, they appeared on a CBC TV music show, Where It's At, and their efforts impressed producer Jack Richardson so much so that he actually mortgaged his house to create a record label and then produced the 1969 Guess Who album, Wheatfield Soul. Now, the third single released off that album, These Eyes, that topped the charts in Canada and climbed to number 6 on the Hot 100 in 1969.
These eyes.
And then the band scored the number 10 U.S. hit Laughing in that same year. And in 1970, the Guess Who released the number 5 hit No Time. And after that, American Woman and the flip side, No Sugar Tonight, climbed to number 1.
American woman, stay away from me.
But then just as the group were enjoying some serious success, Randy Bachman quit the band, and he went on to form Bachman Turner Overdrive, which Bachman Turner Overdrive, that's what most people call it. So with Randy gone, Burton took control of the Guess Who, and he recruited guitarist Greg Lescue and Kurt Winter. By the end of 1970, they had charted twice more with the singles Hand Me Down World and Share the Land. However, as the 70s progressed, the band's popularity started to wane. Don McDougall replaced Lescue and Bill Wallace replaced Kell. And more band members came and went from there. And then in 1975, Burton Cummings disbanded the group, and he did a solo career as well. Then jump ahead to 1979, and Jim Kell and Don McDougall attempted to resurrect the Guess Who, adding vocalist Alan McDougall, also guitarist David Inglis, and drummer Vince Masters, and the horn player David Perez. They released an album, All This for a Song, and then a single, Sweet Young Thing. Both of them flopped majorly. And then as the years passed, there would be more efforts to revitalize the band. Then in 1986, Jim Kell discovered that the name The Guess Who, the band name, wasn't trademarked, and he submitted applications with the U.S. Trademark Office to secure the name without talking to Burton or Randy, from what I understand. Instituting his own version of The Guess Who, Kell was then joined by original drummer Gary Peterson in the late 80s, and they launched a series of nostalgia tours and released new Guess Who albums. Kell and Peterson were joined by an entirely new cast of musicians from there. And then when Kell retired in 2016, Peterson was left as the only original Guess Who member. However, he didn't play every night, so there were Guess Who shows without an actual Guess Who band member, just like Foreigner. Bachman and Cummings, they were both livid at this imposter band. In 2023, they filed a $20 million lawsuit claiming trademark infringement and false advertising. The suit revealed the band was using photos of Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman to dupe fans into buying tickets for their shows. And they alleged that they were autographing Cummings and Bachman's names on, vintage albums for fans. Pretty bad. As the dispute pressed on in 2024, Burton Cummings took the nuclear option, a brilliant move here. He conceded his royalties on the Guess Who classic tracks to block the band from playing his songs. Said Cummings about it, "I'm willing to do anything to stop this fake band. They're taking my life story and pretending it's theirs. They're not the people who made these records, and they shouldn't act like they did. If the songs are performed by the fake Guess Who, they'll be sued for every single occurrence." Now, not only did this penalize the band for playing hits like American Woman, These Eyes, and No Time, it also targeted venues that booked the band. And soon after this, the fake Guess Who concerts stopped dead in their tracks, and so did the band. Later that year, Burton and Randy revealed that they had acquired control of the Guess Who name for the first time since the good old days. And in June 2025, they announced they were reforming the Guess Who for a 2026 tour called Taking It Back. Yeah, good for them. Now let's get them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Brilliant move by Burton Cummings there. Coming in at number 4, I got Queen. And for Queen's first 2 decades, the band's roster stayed remarkably consistent. In 1970 and 1971, there was some turnover at the bassist position, going from Mike Gross to Barry Mitchell to Doug Bogie, and then, of course, the band locked in on John Deacon. But that was about all. The members of Queen, of course, need no introduction. Everybody knows them. The remaining 3/4 of the classic quartet consist of frontman Freddie Mercury, guitarist Brian May, and, of course, drummer Roger Taylor. That lineup remained intact from 1971 to 1991, till the death of Freddie Mercury. During that 20-year span, Queen released 14 studio albums from their self-titled debut to 1991's Innuendo. 3 of these achieved multi-platinum status in the U.S., 1975's The Night at the Opera, 1977's News of the World, and 1980's The Game. 2 more went platinum, A Day at the Races and Jazz. In all, Queen scored 9 top 20 hits in the U.S. and nearly 40 top 20 hits in the U.K.
Hey, gonna get you through another one bites the dust. Just give it back.
So when Freddie Mercury failed to appear at events promoting that new release of Innuendo in 91, rumors started to circulate that the frontman was seriously ill. Freddie refused to grant interviews or appear publicly. And then he divulged on November 23, 1991, that he had AIDS. Said Mercury, and I quote, "The time has now come for my friends and fans around the world to know the truth, and I hope that everyone will join with me, my doctors, and all those worldwide in the fight against this terrible disease." Freddie Mercury died the next day of pneumonia brought on by the illness. Taking Mercury's last words to heart, the surviving members of the band launched the 1992 Freddie Mercury tribute concert for AIDS awareness. That, of course, raised millions to support AIDS relief and research. Now, this money also included profits from the final Queen release featuring Freddie, 1995's Made in Heaven. John Deacon was so heartbroken by Freddie Mercury's death that he really didn't see how Queen could move forward at all. Said John, and I quote, "As far as we're concerned, this is it. There is no point carrying on. It's impossible to replace Freddie," which of course everybody agrees with. After playing live with Queen 3 more times, he retired from music and is faded from public view. But even without Freddie and John, Queen would continue on. In fact, in 2004, May and Taylor formed a partnership with badass vocalist Paul Rodgers after a chance encounter. At a 2004 London tribute show for the Fender Stratocaster's 50th anniversary, Brian joined Paul for a performance of Freeze All Right Now. And of course, there was an immediate spark. Said May, it happened almost by accident at an award show. I remember coming off stage and Paul's lady said, "Oh, you guys seem to really have that great chemistry. Now all you need is a drummer." And I went, "Well, I think I know a drummer." Brian May contacted Roger Taylor, and the three legends formed Queen plus Paul Rodgers. During their 5-year collaboration, the trio embarked on 2 massive world tours, sold out everywhere. And the band played a combination of Queen's anthems, of course, Paul Rodgers' classic hits with Bad Company and Free. The partnership culminated in the 2008 release of The Cosmos Rocks, a studio album of original material. In 2009, Paul Rodgers amicably parted ways to rejoin Bad Company, saying at the time, it was fun and it was challenging. It's like learning a new language for me. But eventually, I got to the point where I thought, I'm not really the singer for Queen, so I've got to get back to my own music. By the way, one of Freddie Mercury's favorite singers ever was Paul Rodgers, so there's that. Now, Queen's modern era, that was born from another happy accident when Brian May and Roger Taylor prepared to perform on the American Idol Season 8 finale in 2009. They saw a video of Adam Lambert auditioning with Bohemian Rhapsody.
Life is just begun.
Now, fans flooded Brian May's inbox with videos of that audition, and after Lambert joined Queen to perform We Are the Champions on the show, May and Taylor realized they'd found the only person with enough theatrical nerve to fill Freddie's shoes, without imitating, really. So in 2011, the band formed Queen plus Adam Lambert. And like their previous Paul Rodgers collaboration, it was made clear that Lambert was not replacing Mercury at all. Still, the band felt that Lambert's stage presence and his staggering multi-octave range truly unlocked Queen's catalog for the first time since Freddie's passing. So over their decade-plus partnership, Queen plus Adam Lambert became a global powerhouse. Their music is a celebration of Freddie Mercury's legacy, with Lambert performing alongside archival footage of Freddie, really bridging the band's storied past with this new generation. So I think it's pretty cool. All right, coming in at number 3, I've got Journey, a band that has featured 25 different members across its 50-plus year run. It averages only to roughly a new band member every 2 years. But now, we've talked about Journey's origins a few different times before, so I'll make it quick. The band formed in 1973 in San Francisco, California. Of course, founding members include guitarist Neil Schon, bassist Ross Valerie, keyboardist Greg Rowley, drummer Prairie Prince, and George Tickner on rhythm guitar at the time. Before releasing their first studio album in 1975, Ainsley Dunbar took over on drums, but the band needed a frontman, and Robert Fleischman was hired, but he was ousted pretty quickly in favor of Steve Perry. Perry, known now as The Voice, he was the catalyst that the band needed to conquer arenas and ultimately the world over, which they did. Steve Smith replaced Dunbar in 1978, and of course Jonathan Cain replaced Rowley in 1980. And Journey's juggernaut lineup was set from there. Coming into their 7th album, Escape, the band already had 3 multi-platinum albums under their belt: Infinity, Evolution, and Departure. But Escape, that took Journey into the stratosphere with over 10 million albums sold with massive hits, Who's Crying Now, Open Arms, and Don't Stop Believin', to name a few.
I wonder who's crying now. Don't stop believing.
That magical 5-man roster stayed together for just one more album, the 6-times platinum LP Frontiers. Even mega fans forget that. The definitive lineup of Journey, they were only together for those 2 albums, right? Escape and Frontiers. And of course, they had massive hits from Frontiers, with Separate Ways, Worlds Apart, and Faithfully. And then Raised on Radio had a lot of this too, but the band was fracturing from there. With Steve Smith and Ross Valerie gone, and Steve Perry taking a more assertive role from there, the band turned through 6 new musicians before Perry confessed to Neil Schon and Jonathan Cain that he was just burnt out. Said Perry, and I quote, "I called John and Neil together. We met in San Rafael. We sat on the edge of the marina, and I just told them, I can't do this anymore. I got to get out for a while." So Journey disbanded in 1987, and it would be a decade before the band would regroup. So returning to their Escape and Frontiers roster, the Big Five released Trial by Fire in 1996. And with it, they scored their lone 90s hit, When You Love a Woman, hit #1 on the AC charts for a long time. But plans for a supporting tour, that ended when Steve Perry discovered he had a degenerative bone condition and he needed hip replacement surgery. Steve Perry later announced that he was leaving Journey, so the band traded one Steve for another Steve. Perry was out and singer Steve Augeri was in. Now, Steve Augeri reportedly went from working at The Gap, being the lead singer of one of America's most beloved bands. Jerry fronted the band in 1998, but the relentless touring, the schedule, it eventually blew out his voice by 2003. The drama reached a fever pitch during a tour with Def Leppard when Steve Augeri was accused of using pre-recorded vocal tracks. In 2006, Steve passed the mic to short-lived frontman Jeff Scott Soto. Neil Schon wasn't a fan of Soto's voice, and so he began searching YouTube for a replacement. After 2 straight days of dead ends, Neil Schon found a grainy video of Arnel Pineda, a homeless struggling singer from the Philippines. Arnel was covering faithfully in this video. He was belting it out with ease. Neil reached out, and months later, Pineda joined the band in December of 2007. On February 21st, 2008, Arnel Pineda made his live debut in front of 20,000 screaming fans at the Vina del Mar International Song Festival in Chile. Despite being dismissed by critics as a karaoke singer at best, he proved them all wrong, and he's fronted the band through 2 decades of resurgence. Today, Arnel is Journey's longest-running frontman by far, and he's proved himself a vocal powerhouse through the years. You really can't overstate how difficult it would be to take up the mantle of Steve Perry, in my opinion, the greatest rock singer ever, and such difficult songs with Journey songs. He's had his ups and downs. In fact, in September of 24, the pressure almost got to him. Arnel Pineda found himself at the center of a social media firestorm. This was following a difficult performance of the Rock in Rio Festival in Brazil. A video from that set, with Pineda struggling to hit those Don't Stop Believin' high notes, it went viral. And it brought the online trolls like crazy. Now, devastated by the backlash, Pineda took to Facebook and he offered to step away from Journey for good if critics voted him out with 1 million go comments on his post. Instead, Pineda was given an overwhelming vote of support from the fan base and also his bandmates. The stays outnumbered the goes by far, and Arnel is currently with them. Here's what Arnel has said about his legacy with Journey.
Around the world, don't stop believing.
I give really huge respect to what they do and to the legacy that they have built all these years. So I am just trying to follow the blueprint that Mr. Perry has left behind. It's an amazing, it's an incomparable blueprint. I mean, nobody can top it. Nobody can touch it. I'm just so happy to be here, grateful to be here enough to be able to continue the legacy.
Yeah.
And wow.
All right, it's time for the bridesmaid position. Our number 2, I've got Motley Crue. Though the band started in 1981, we're jumping ahead to the 90s after they had released 5 platinum and platinum plus albums and almost 20 million copies sold in the States. On October 1st, 1991, Motley Crue released a compilation Decade of Decadence, 81 to 91, and it sold 2.5 million copies, right when grunge was happening. However, by 1992, band tensions boiled over and frontman Vince Neil was dumped from the band in favor of John Corabi. This was a choice that irritated a lot of Crue fans at the time. In a sensational twist for a band with Motley Crue's kind of ego, their replacement singer wasn't actually a fan of their music at all. In fact, during his 1992 audition, John shocked Tommy Lee and Nikki Sixx by admitting he didn't own a single one of their records and had to ask them for copies of their albums so that he could learn the lyrics to the hits. He didn't even know a lot of the songs. The band, they kind of found it hysterical, but they hired him anyway, viewing his outsider status as the shot of credibility they desperately needed to survive in the grunge era. I mean, Tommy Lee reportedly laughed until he cried when he realized the man they chose to lead the band had never even seen them perform live. or for that matter, even wanted to. So John Corabi took the reins for 1994's self-titled comeback LP. Now, John caused friction when he refused to sing one of Motley Crue's biggest hits. We talked about this once before, I believe, but there was a heated exchange within the band when he refused to sing Girls, Girls, Girls because he strongly felt that the song was no longer appropriate in modern times. And this was back in the 90s. He wanted to scrap from their set list. Now, Nikki Sixx, the primary lyricist and the true leader of Motley, he kind of lost it on the short timer, and he reminded him that he had no power within the band to make that call. But actually, Tommy Lee came to his defense, and for a time, one of the crew's biggest hits was not sung in the live shows. This revised lineup with Corabi, it didn't stick very long. On the opening night of their 1994 tour, the band sold just 4,000 tickets for a 15,000-seat arena. So the band was kind of forced to play smaller arenas from there. And then after 4 years of being told that Vince Neil is never coming back, John Corabi, he learned the brutal reality of the music business in 1997 through a silent telephone. Despite recording the bulk of the Generation Swine album, Corabi was kept in the dark about secret meetings between the band and Vince Neil. Once the reunion was finalized, John famously remarked that his phone went from ringing off the hook to being so silent that he had to call himself just to make sure that his answering machine was still working. Said John about it, "The minute they made the announcement that Vince was back, if I wanted to have a message on my answering machine, I had to call myself." All of his lead vocals were erased from the album, and he was sent packing. Can you imagine that? You record all and they're all gone. Vince Neil returned to the band in 97, and he's been the go-to frontman ever since. Man, even though recent performances have had many in the audience wondering just what the hell he was singing, can't really hit those high notes anymore, so he kind of talk sings and lets the crowd take over. And of course, we can't get done with Motley Crue without talking about the case of guitarist Mick Mars. What began as a quiet retirement due to a horrifically debilitating bone disease, it exploded into a scorched earth legal war that shattered the 41-year brotherhood of Motley Crue. In a sensational 2023 lawsuit, founding guitarist Mick Mars accused Nikki Sixx of gaslighting him by constantly insulting his memory and his guitar skills while allegedly miming his own bass parts to pre-recorded tracks. That was what Mick Mars said. Then the drama took a final crushing turn in January of 2026 when an independent arbitrator ruled that Mick Mars had actually signed away his rights to future touring revenue in a 2008 agreement that he helped draft. Now, forced to recant his miming allegations under oath after his own expert witness confirmed the band actually did play live, Mick Mars was not only stripped of his stakeholder status, but ordered to pay the band roughly $244,000 in unrecouped tour advances. So sad how this ended. All right, here we are at number one, and for this one, we got a great one. We have a band, though, who lost their singer and another key member in a devastating plane crash, and they kept going after, though it took about a decade to come back together. I'm talking about Lynyrd Skynyrd, and this one's going to blow your mind. Now, remember solving story problems in math class as a kid? Well, Skynyrd's shifting lineup is kind of like that, an insane math problem involving over 30 band members. See if you can follow along here. All right, so the group got started in 1964 under the name My Backyard, and it was comprised of frontman Ronnie Van Zant, guitarist Gary Rosington and Alan Collins, bassist Larry Junstrom, and drummer Bob Burns. After changing the name to Lynyrd Skynyrd in 1968, the first official lineup change came in 1971 when Burns and Junstrom were replaced by Ricky Medlock on drums and bassist Greg T. Walker. But Walker would be out after a year, and he was replaced by bassist Leon Wilkeson. Meanwhile, Medlock became the band's third guitarist alongside Rosington and Collins. That opened things up for the return of Bob Burns, who reclaimed his former spot on drums. Still with me? In 1972, Ricky Medlock left, bringing the guitarist total back to two. And that same year, Skynyrd brought in their first keyboardist, Billy Powell. And then during the recording sessions for pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, Wilkeson left and was replaced by Strawberry Alarm Clock alum Ed King. But King took up the role of third guitarist when Wilkeson wanted to come back and play bass for the band, so there's that. So by the time they released their first album, Lynyrd Skynyrd already featured 10 different members, 7 of which were now officially in the band. The release of pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd in August 1973 proved to be a promising start for the band. The 2x platinum album gave us legendary tracks like Tuesday's Gone and Gimme 3 Steps, of course Simple Man and Freebird.
Away.
In 1974, Skynyrd released Second Helping with the same lineup intact. The album featured Sweet Home Alabama, and once again sold over 2 million copies in the U.S. However, before the release of their third offering, Bob Burns, he called it quits again. To replace him, Skynyrd recruited Artemis Pyle. Then 2 months after the release of the band's third album, Nothing Fancy, Ed King, the man who co-wrote the immortal Sweet Home Alabama riff, quit mid-tour in 1975 after a blowout with Ronnie Van Zant. And this was over a broken guitar string. Enter guitarist Steve Gaines. But then, Lynyrd Skynyrd was about to experience the biggest shakeup of their career. Just 3 days after releasing their fifth album, Street Survivors, on October 17, 1977, the band suffered a horrible tragedy. En route from South Carolina to Louisiana, the band's charter plane was forced to attempt an emergency landing in the swamps of Mississippi. 6 died in this crash, including frontman Ronnie Van Zant and guitarist Steve Gaines. Now, in the aftermath, surviving members Gary Rosington and Alan Collins were so distraught, they were so broken, they vowed never to use the Skynyrd name ever again. And for a decade, they actually kept that promise. Skynyrd was officially disbanded for a time. But as the years passed, they were drawn back to the band by a sense of duty to Ronnie Van Zant. Said Rosington, and I quote, "I didn't think I'd ever play again. I didn't really want to, but then I realized the music had to live on or the crash would have won." So Lynyrd Skynyrd reformed in 1987 for the year-long tribute tour featuring Ronnie's younger brother, Johnny Van Zant, on the mic. Johnny was terrified of stepping into his brother's shoes. He actually only agreed after receiving a sign from Ronnie in a dream that he would have. Said Johnny, "I never wanted to be Ronnie. I just wanted to represent him. I told the guys if I can't do this with heart, then I'm out." Now, this amended lineup also included guitarist Ed King and Randall Hall taking the place of Alan Collins. Actually, Alan was paralyzed in 1986 from a car accident. That means this latest iteration of Lynyrd Skynyrd was down to just one original member, Gary Rosington. Gary was in it for the long haul, though. He stayed with the band until his death in 2023. Now, since then, Lynyrd Skynyrd has been made up of a completely new lineup. The next longest tenured member is actually frontman Johnny Van Zant. 70s era members Artemis Pyle and Ed King left in 1991, 1996 actually. In 2001, Leanne Wilkeson died of natural causes, and then Billy Powell suffered a fatal heart attack in 2009. Over the past 4 decades, several other musicians have joined the fray. There have been 5 more drummers, with Michael Cardellone from the Damn Yankees currently behind the kit for the band. Peter Keys has taken over on keyboard. Bassist Robbie Harrington, he joined in 2025. Guitarist Ricky Medlock, who played with Skynyrd in the 70s, has been with the band since 96. And the 2 other guitarists carrying the torch are Mark Mateka and Damon Johnson. During Lynyrd Skynyrd's resurrected years, the spirit of Skynyrd has lived on through 9 studio albums and a steady stream of touring. You know, I always wondered why they don't just call some of these bands, you know, without the original members that keep going, that have new members, like The Next Generation, like Foreigner, The Next Generation. Kind of like Star Trek, The Next Generation. Foreigner, The Next Generation. I think that'd be cool. But, you know, it's cool to have these bands, to hear these songs, to go hear and play live. But I have to admit, I did see Foreigner back in the day, a night that Mick Jones didn't perform with them. And it was like watching a tribute band. I mean, nothing against Kelly Hansen because he's an incredible vocalist. But when you're used to Lou Gramm's gritty voice, nothing can replace that. Just like I love Arnel Pineda, but he's not Steve Perry. And you can tell that. Actually, I had a friend who said, "Hey, I just saw Journey, and man, if you close your eyes, I mean, you can hear Steve Perry exactly." And nothing against Arnel, but they just have a different timbre to their voice. Timbre. I always say timbre. I think it's timbre, but some people say timbre, tomato, tomato. Anyway, I'm just saying that I can tell, my ear can tell, that Steve Perry, that magic is not completely there. But it's still fun to go and see these bands. But what do you think? Let's have a great discussion below. about the replacement bands. I'm so glad that Guess Who called them out. Should we do another one of these? I mean, we've talked about other bands like the Little River Band. It's really sad when there's no original members and a lot of people think they're going to see the band. I remember years ago, a friend of mine said, hey, let's go see the Beach Boys. This is going to be legendary. And I'm like, well, Brian Wilson isn't with the Beach Boys. Well, what? Are you sure? Again, a lot of people don't know that these members are gone. And so, anyway, let's have a great discussion below. Share your memories, share your feelings about this. I think it'll be a great discussion. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. Love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.